sentenced on multiple counts of sexual battery against an unidentified teenage boy.
The former physical education teacher has been sentenced now to 9 months behind bars for having a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old boy.
The encounters took place over the course of 3 months last year, one of them reportedly in the school gym.
She is just the latest in a string of female teachers caught crossing the line with young students.
This is episode 8 of a series I've been producing on the subject of teachers who crossed the sacred boundary between educators and students. Click on the card in the upper right-hand corner to see the playlist. In 1998, a woman named Mary Kay Letourneau appeared on the cover of People magazine with her first child, Audrey. In July of 2020, more than 20 years later, Rolling Stone magazine published an article in which one writer took issue with the flattering depiction of Letourneau. Quote, bathed in warm light, with her blonde hair softly curling and her brown eyes doleful, the writer noted. The Rolling Stone piece was published after Letourneau had died at the age of 58 from colon cancer. For those of you who are unaware, Mary Kay Letourneau is the woman whose entanglement with a 13-year-old boy became a national spectacle in the year 1997. Much of the country was transfixed by the scandal. The baby on the People magazine cover with Letourneau was fathered by her underage lover, a kid named Vili Falau. The writer of the Rolling Stone piece expresses her indignation that People magazine would be so bold as to portray the relationship between this woman and her teenage sweetheart as anything other than child sexual assault, and goes on to condemn the media for its sensational coverage of such stories in subsequent years. Yet this was not how people viewed the case in 1998, Rolling Stone continues. The media covered Letourneau not as a sexual predator, but either as a subject of prurient tabloid interest, on par with the domestic disputes of Hollywood celebrities, or as a tragic lover ensnared in an ill-fated romance that society simply was unable to understand. The article continues to criticize the media's love affair with this story and its years of coverage of every new development in the Letourneau-Falau soap opera. It accused the tabloids of perpetuating the gendered double standard associated with child sexual assault. The author faults the press for enabling a cultural attitude that forgives female sexual predators while praising the supposedly lucky young men who happen to have the perceived good fortune of bedding a hot teacher.
Good morning, Mr. Daly.
Hello, ma'am.
Mr. Daly, your physical relationship with the defendant lasted how long?
5 glorious weeks, ma'am.
Can you point out the defendant for the court?
Yeah, she's right over there, looking all fine.
You're stupid.
The affair began on April 15, 2014, correct?
Yes, ma'am. It was the best day of my life. After school, I went in and said, what could I do for some extra credit? And it was on.
This guy. Extra credit.
So corny.
Since the 1990s, the Rolling Stone article continues, when Letourneau and Falau became tabloid fixtures, we have consistently seen coverage of female sexual predators undermine the severity of their crimes, focusing instead on the question of why an attractive older woman would exhibit sexual interest in an underage boy. The New York Post described 27-year-old gym teacher Pamela Rogers Turner, accused of having intercourse and oral sex with a 13-year-old boy more than a dozen times, as a stunning blonde bombshell, taking care to note her past as a bikini model for Harley Davidson. The infamous Miss Pamela Joan Rogers, also known as Pamela Rogers Turner, is the subject of this video. In the year 2005, 8 years or so after the story of Letourneau and Falau began, and as the media's infatuation with the story continued, Pamela Joan Rogers' sexual exploits with a teenage student captured national attention and fed an apparent public lust for such salacious content. The following narrative is based on available reporting as of the date that I'm posting this video regarding the turbulent life and the sex crimes committed by Pamela Joan Rogers. Pamela Joan Rogers was born on July 1st of 1977 in the Volunteer state of Tennessee. She attended Clark Range High School in the town of Clark Range, a little over 100 miles east of Nashville. The Rogers family name is well known in the small town of less than 1,000 people. To this day, Pamela's father, Lamar Rogers, is the head coach of the only high school in the town's legendary girls basketball team, the Clark Range High Lady Buffaloes. Last year, 2022, he was inducted into the National Federation of State High Schools Association Hall of Fame. The patriarch of the Rogers family has won more games than any other coach in the history of the state of Tennessee and has led the team to multiple state championships. Pamela's squad won the title in 1995. She was an active and popular student. She was prom queen her senior year. She graduated in 1995 and played college basketball at Tennessee Tech and Cumberland University. In March of '97, she garnered the distinction of being a ring girl at a WWE Monday Nitro event while she was on spring break in Florida. She apparently did some modeling around 2002. She married a high school basketball coach named Christopher Turner in 2003 and became known as Pamela Rogers Turner. Around that time, she got a job teaching physical education and coaching girls basketball at Centertown Elementary School near McMinnville, Tennessee, a town of about 13,000 people, about 75 miles southeast of Nashville. But not long after she married Chris, the couple began experiencing some interpersonal difficulties. During her second year of teaching, the 2004-2005 school year, the young couple's fledgling marriage had become quite strained. The two would separate a few days before Christmas that year, and Chris filed for divorce only a few weeks later, in mid-January of 2005, citing irreconcilable differences and inappropriate marital conduct. Later, during the divorce proceedings, Chris would accuse Pamela of drug abuse and infidelity, among other things. They'd been married for less than 2 years. But a few months before the couple separated, as the 04-05 school year was beginning, a 13-year-old boy who was one of Mrs. Rogers' students began aggressively flirting with a 27-year-old PE instructor. I'll refer to the young man as Todd. Todd was a tall and lanky basketball player with a mop of shaggy dark hair. People who knew the boy at the time have said that he was not your ordinary 8th grader. One acquaintance estimated that the boy was probably shaving in the 7th grade. The kid was about 5'9" and hung out with older boys. The kid was apparently a basketball prospect as well. Pamela's husband, Chris, had asked his wife to watch out for the boy, expecting that after he graduated from Centertown Elementary, where Pamela taught the youngster, he would become a starter for the Warren County High School boys basketball team, which was coached by Chris. When Todd would encounter Mrs. Rogers in gym class, he would make sexual suggestions to the young teacher. He would take her house key off of the keychain during class, and he'd tell his teacher that he was going to have a copy made and that he was going to come to her house. Todd had a friend named Justin, who was somewhat older than him at the time. The teenager witnessed the development of the forbidden relationship that fall and told his recollections to a publication called Nashville Scene in an article titled Inside Pamela Rogers. One night, Justin was at Todd's house and realized that the kid was presently exchanging text messages with a teacher. In one message, the teacher said to Todd that she thought he was cute. "I think you're hot," the boy responded. Those text messages led to numerous illicit liaisons between the physical education teacher and her pupil, the adolescent athlete.
Rogers, a former homecoming queen who taught PE at the school for 2 years, lived at the boy's house for a brief period. His mother once called her a family friend.
After Pamela and her husband separated in December, she began renting an apartment. At one point, the water heater in her new place died, and Todd's helpful mother offered to let Pamela sleep at her family home for a while. Of course, Mom had no way of knowing that Pamela was at that time sexually involved with the woman's son. The teacher had vaginal intercourse and oral sex with the youngster more than a dozen times over the course of a 3-month period at the boy's home, at her apartment, and even at school.
One of them reportedly in the school gym.
According to Todd's friend Justin, the youngin' had been a virgin until he began his escapades with Mrs. Rogers. The kid was apparently having the time of his life, his friend Justin would recall later. Justin said the kid, quote, loved every minute of it. However, Todd was not as serious about the relationship as Rogers was. He was in it for the sex, Justin recalled, and called his friend a, quote, little pimp. According to Justin, Todd had a girlfriend his own age when he became involved with Mrs. Rogers, but ditched the girl to spend more time with the grown woman. Rogers apparently became obsessed with Todd over time. Justin recalled that the teacher began calling the kid 5 or 6 times a night. Pamela followed the teen night and day, according to reports, hung out with him around town, walked him to his family's car after basketball games, cheered for him exclusively, and sat with him during sporting events. Residents of the small town noticed the unusual connection between the pair. Rumors began to spread around Centertown, and soon police received an anonymous tip about a possible deviant relationship between a teacher and a student. In February of 2005, Rogers was arrested and charged with 15 counts of sexual battery by an authority figure and 13 counts of statutory rape, and was held on $50,000 bond. Soon after, she bonded out of jail and hid out at her father's chicken farm in Clark Range. She faced a total of 28 sex crimes charges and as much as a 100-year sentence. In August, just 7 months after her initial arrest, she pleaded no contest to 4 counts of sexual battery and avoided a trial. She was ordered to serve 9 months of an 8-year sentence and to never contact Todd again. Her sentence also included supervised probation after her eventual release for the rest of her 8-year suspended sentence. The judge also ordered her to surrender her teaching certificate and said she would register as a child sex offender. The sentence prohibited her from profiting from the case and from doing interviews with the media. After serving about 7 months, Pamela Rogers was released from jail in February of 2006 for good behavior. The woman spent exactly 198 days locked down for her crime. However, soon after her release, Pamela and Todd conspired to communicate with one another covertly. The pair contacted one another numerous times using burner phones, texting one another, and instant messaging via social media, and by sending messages through intermediaries. This went on for weeks, and while Pamela was on supervised probation. During that period, Pamela messaged the boy saying, among other things, quote, "Do you still love me? Are you still waiting? Or do you want me to try to move on with my life? I miss you so much. I wish I could talk to you." She sent the minor a bunch of photos and videos of herself during those weeks, often in the nude. This is a video that the former teacher sent where she dances suggestively for the youngster. In some of the videos, the woman was performing sexual acts on herself. On July 14th, a judge ordered Rogers to serve the rest of her suspended sentence, and prosecutors brought new charges of solicitation of sexual exploitation of a minor. Pamela Rogers pleaded guilty to the new charges and admitted sending the indecent images, while investigators alleged she also received photos and videos from the boy, who had turned 15 years old by then. She spoke at her sentencing and said,
No matter how broken my spirit was, I don't know how I could have got to the point to have made the decisions that I've made. I don't know what I was thinking, and it's clear that I wasn't thinking. I was blinded by emotions that I'm ashamed that I had. I betrayed my profession, and that is something that I'm truly ashamed of. And I betrayed the family of the victim. I've lost my career, and it was more than just a career to me, it was my life, and it is what made me happy. I've lost my freedom, my dreams, my dignity, and I feel I've lost myself.
An additional 2 years were added to Rogers' original sentence for a total of 10 years. She ultimately served only about 6 years, though, and was released in the year 2012. About 3 years later, in June of 2015, Pamela Joan Rogers was arrested for a third time for allegedly conspiring to smuggle cell phones into the Tennessee State Prison for Women, where she had served time. She and 2 apparent accomplices, inmates at the prison, were indicted on 5 felony counts of introducing contraband into a state prison. Information regarding the outcome of that case was not readily obtainable, but as of July of 2017, Rogers remained behind bars. In an unrelated case, in July of 2017, Pamela Rogers' brother, Alvin Rogers, was arrested on sexual assault charges involving a juvenile. Pamela Joan Rogers will remain in the sex offender registry for the rest of her life. Thanks once again for tuning in. Thanks for all the likes and the comments. Thanks for helping me to grow this channel. Thanks to all of you who have already subscribed, and if you haven't already, please go ahead and do so. I'd appreciate your help in reaching our goal of 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Right now, it looks like we'll probably make it there by the end of the month. So respect and love to all my subscribers and supporters, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I got several stories in the works that I think you guys will find pretty interesting. I'll be posting those soon, so stay tuned for those. Once again, thanks for coming through and checking me out. Peace.